Star Walker Studios presents Game Master's Journey, your multi-dimensional RPG podcast. Hello, fellow gamer. Welcome to episode 161 of Game Master's Journey. I'm your host, Lex Starwalker. On this show, we discuss the craft and art of game mastering. I've been running RPGs for over 25 years now, and I produce this show in the hopes that you can benefit from my experience, my triumphs, and my screw-ups. I've got a great show for you today. I'm going to continue my series of episodes on the Dungeon Master's Guide. We are still in part 1, Builder of Worlds. We are still in chapter 1, A World of Your Own. Today we are going to talk about factions and organizations. But before I crack open the DMG, I just want to make a couple announcements. First of all, reminder to you, I am running the Hidden Shrine of Tamawakan, which is one of the adventures from Tales from the Yawning Portal, and I am streaming that live to YouTube every Monday from 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're free that time of day and you'd like to come join me and my D&D group, you would be very welcome. And there is a chat room there, so you can chat with myself, the players, and the other people watching, and we have a really great time. However, if you are not available at that time and that day, do not despair, because those videos also appear on my YouTube channel forever, basically. So if you can't watch it live, you can still watch it. And if you're wanting to start watching it live and you want to get caught up, you can do that. All of the episodes of the campaign are up on the channel. So as of recording this, we have played 6 sessions. So there are 6 episodes up and we're having a lot of fun. We started at level 5. The PCs are now level 6. Today, I return to our Dungeon Master's Guide discussion, going through the Dungeon Master's Guide and just picking it apart and examining all the bits and pieces. So today, we are still in part 1, Master of Worlds. Is that it? Is that what it's called? Yes, part 1, Master of Worlds. Chapter 1, A World of Your Own. Today we are in the section Factions and Organizations, starting on page 21. Temples, guilds, orders, secret societies, and colleges are important forces in the social order of any civilization. Their influence might stretch across multiple towns and cities, with or without a similarly wide-ranging political authority. Organizations can play an important part in the lives of player characters, which is why we care about them, becoming their patrons, allies, or enemies, just like individual non-player characters. When characters join these organizations, they become part of something larger than themselves, which can give their adventures a context in the wider world. So they're doing a lot more with organizations in 5th edition than I remember them doing in previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons. And if you have read or run or played any of the official adventures for D&D from Wizards, the organizations, their kind of stock organizations, are always a part of them. Things like the Harpers and the Zentarum and the Lord's Alliance and all that. So these organizations are discussed a bit in the Player's Handbook, I think, and they're discussed here in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And they're referenced in pretty much all of the adventures, all the way back to the starter box. Lost Mines of Phandelver has the organizations playing a part. So of course, if you're not running in the realms, if you're running in another published setting or your own homebrew world, you can make your own organizations and use your own organizations. You don't have to use the ones from the Forgotten Realms that Wizards uses, although you could. Just because they're Realms organizations doesn't mean that you couldn't repurpose them for your homebrew world or for whatever world you're running in. So you could use the Emerald Enclave. And here on page 21, they have the ones that they use. So it's the Harpers, Order of the Gauntlet, Emerald Enclave, Lord's Alliance, and the Zentarum. And as much of a fan of the Forgotten Realms I am not, I do think Wizards did a good job of choosing a handful of organizations that, to a fairly decent degree, cover a pretty broad spectrum of the types of characters your players might be playing. So the Harpers are good for, any of your goody two-shoes characters. Also, any kind of arcane spellcaster or bard fits really well in the Harpers, as well as clerics of certain deities fit well in the Harpers. The Order of the Gauntlet is a great organization for your paladins and your other fighter types that are all about protecting people and fighting evil and all that good stuff. The Emerald Enclave is a good organization for your druids and your rangers and your other, maybe barbarians, your other nature-loving characters. The Lord's Alliance is a good organization for any noble character, any well-to-do or aristocratic character that a player plays, or any character that's interested in political power. There's the Lord's Alliance. And then finally, the Zentarum is good for all your low-life characters, your characters that are maybe walking the line between the right and the wrong side of the law, your rogues, some of your bards, and really any characters that want to be involved with thieves guilds and shady organizations and assassins and stuff like that. So I think they did a pretty good job, without having organizations that map directly to each class, of saying, hey, whatever type of character you're playing, one of these organizations will probably kind of fit for you, and maybe multiple organizations. The other thing I think they do really well in this edition of the game is in the adventures they publish, of showing you how to make these organizations relevant. So, any of the adventures, they'll have little bits where you can get certain quests from people from certain organizations. So, if you're a Harper, then this NPC wants you to do this thing. And you can also sometimes get access to resources or favors from NPCs that you wouldn't normally have because you're part of that organization. So even if you're not running into realms, even if you don't want to use these organizations, it's a great model that you can use for coming up with your own organizations, and also using those in your adventures and making them relevant to the player characters and the players. So it says, at the start of a campaign, backgrounds are a great way to connect adventurers to your world. As the game progresses, though, background ties become less important. And that's a good point. The background is kind of describing what your character has been up to the point you start playing the game. And they do give you, some skill proficiencies and some things that the character can do, but that's kind of it, right? You're not, for the most part, through the course of play, going to get more stuff from your background than you did at first level. It's kind of this is what you get, and that's it. Factions and organizations aimed at player characters are a way to keep higher level adventurers connected to your world, providing ties to key NPCs and a clear agenda beyond individual gain. In the same way, villainous organizations create an ongoing sense of menace above and beyond the threat of solitary foes. So that's a benefit of using organizations. There's really two benefits here. First, for your player characters, it's a way to tie them into your world. It's a way to engage them in stories you want to tell, to get them involved with events you want them to be involved in. Basically, in a nutshell, a way to simplify it, an organization is a great source of hooks for a particular player character. And then they work great for your antagonists to give the player character something to come up against that's more powerful and more difficult to deal with than just an individual villain, an organization. It's the difference between facing Darth Vader and facing the entire Galactic Empire. Having different characters tied to different factions can create interesting situations at the gaming table, as long as those factions have similar goals and don't work in opposition to one another all the time. Now, if they're in opposition sometimes, that could be interesting depending on you and your players and what kind of game you want to have. But if you're open to a game where sometimes the player characters are in conflict, then that could be an interesting thing where sometimes their organizations are in conflict. So maybe one character's a member of the Harpers and the other one's a member of the Zentarum, and sometimes they work together knowingly or unknowingly, and sometimes they're opposed to one another knowingly or unknowingly. And I say unknowingly because the Zentarum is very secretive. So there's a lot of times they're involved with stuff and no one outside of the Zentarum knows that they're involved. Adventurers representing different factions might have competing interests or priorities while they pursue the same goals. And this is something that I don't know about the D&D organized play. I haven't done a lot of it, but I used to do some of the Pathfinder organized play, and they had the same thing. It's almost like for organized play, you have to have organizations, I guess, or factions. I guess it seems like it. But they did this a lot in Pathfinder, where they had different factions and every player character was a member of one of these factions. And every time you had an adventure, your faction leader would come up to you and say, on this adventure, I want you to do this thing. And so if the player characters were all members of different factions, they all had slightly different goals or different side quests they wanted to accomplish on the adventure. And they tended to be secretive for whatever reason. So you wouldn't necessarily know what the other player characters were trying to accomplish. And sometimes they were even in conflict where if this player character gets their thing, this player character doesn't. And the player characters don't even realize they're in conflict until it comes up. So I don't know. It can be interesting. It can also be really contrived. So, you want to be careful and think about what you're doing. Adventure organizations are also a great source of special rewards beyond experience points and treasure. Increased standing in an organization has value in and of itself and might also come with concrete benefits such as access to an organization's information, equipment, magic, and other resources. So that's another great thing about organizations and why I like to use them is it is another avenue of rewards that the player characters can earn. There's only so long that earning more gold is fun. And there's only so long that earning a more powerful magic sword is fun. And there's only so many magic items you can hand out before things get ridiculous. So having organizations that the player characters can join and, move up the ranks and then get more and more privileges is another kind of side to character advancement that the players can pursue. And unlike their level and unlike their treasure and their magic items, this aspect, their rank in an organization is very directly and intimately tied into your world, your setting. And it's a way to pull them in to the setting more and make them care about the setting more. All right, so now we know that organizations are cool and we should probably use them. So now we can talk about how to create them, because maybe you don't run in the realms and you're using your homeworld or whatever, and you want to create your own organizations. Or maybe you do run into realms, but you think the Harpers are lame and you don't want to use them and you want to create your own organization. So we have some discussion on how you can do that. Factions and organizations that you create for your campaign should grow out of the stories that are important to the world. Create organizations that your players will want to interact with, whether as allies, members, or enemies. So, that's something to think about. If you're starting at square one, let's say you got your own homebrew world, like Primordia is my homebrew world, and you want to create some organizations to use in the campaign, not just as like flavor for your world, but actual organizations that you're going to use in your campaign that the player characters hopefully are going to be involved in. Two things to consider is one, what are some important things going on in the world that I want to focus on during this campaign? And think of creating organizations that are somehow involved with that. And two, think about your actual player characters in your group, the characters the players have made, and think of organizations that those characters would be interested in. And where those two things intersect, you've got a great idea for an organization that not only is going to be intriguing and compelling for the players, but is also going to be something that you can use throughout the campaign to do the cool things you want to do. As a starting point, decide what role you want an organization to play in the world. What's it all about? What are its goals? Who founded it and why? What do its members do? Answering these questions should give you a good sense of the organization's personality. From there, think about typical members. How might people describe them? What are the typical members' classes and alignments? What personality traits do they tend to share? Choosing a symbol and a motto for the organization is a way of summing up the work you've done so far. A faction that uses a stag as a symbol probably has a very different personality from one that uses a winged viper. For a motto, choose not just a message, but also a tone and style of speech that fits the organization as you've defined it. Consider the motto of the Harpers: down with tyranny, fairness and equality for all. Sounds like something you'd scream at a rally or a protest, right? Or put on a sign at a protest. The Harpers have a straightforward message of freedom and prosperity. Contrast that with the motto of a group of politically allied cities in the north calling themselves the Lord's Alliance. Threats to home must be terminated without prejudice. Superiority is our security. These are sophisticated people involved in a delicate political alliance with more emphasis on stability than on fairness and equality. Finally, think about the ways that player characters might come into contact with the organization. Who are the important members? Not just the leaders, but the agents in the field that the adventurers might encounter. Where are they active? And where do they have headquarters or strongholds? If adventurers do join, what kind of missions might they be sent on? What rewards can they gain? So these are all good things to think about. So I think it would be fun to kind of illustrate this, to talk about an organization that I've been working on. So the most important organization in my world right now is the Guild, which I normally just call the Guild. I just call it simply that. However, they have a more involved name than that. So let me call up my information on the Guild here. Also oftentimes called the Adventurers Guild. So the full name of the Guild is the Guild of Adventurers, Explorers, and Scholars. Now, I don't think I actually used these questions that they have here, but I did do something very similar. So let's go through their questions and let's see what I got here. So it says, as a starting point, what role do you want the organization to play? So my Adventurers Guild, which is an organization in my world of Primordia, they play a few roles, and actually these are summed up in kind of the I didn't come up with a motto so much for the Guild, but I did come up with kind of like their mission statement that I use to define what the Guild is all about and what they do. So they build, maintain, and protect the portals. So in my world, there are a few city-states that are protected from interdimensional rifts that open all over and the things that come out of them by magical force fields that prevent any kind of interdimensional travel. So the rifts can't open within the cities. And the only way that trade or travel happens between the cities is using these very special magical portals that are somehow able to function when no other kind of interdimensional or teleportation magic will function within these magical force fields. So there are these special portals that they use to get from one city to another. So one of the big functions of the Guild is they build these portals, they take care of them, they keep them going, and they protect them. The Guild also explores ruins, searching for magic and knowledge. So they are studiers of history, archaeology, and culture and magic, and they seek out the ancient ruins of the world and explore them, looking for any kind of art or cultural artifacts left over, as well as magic items and magical technology, for lack of a better term, magic items and spells and things like that that have the knowledge of have been lost, that people don't know of anymore, and collect that stuff and learn from it. They also preserve knowledge. So the guild's all about having libraries and museums and preserving what they find for the future. Build magic understanding and ability. So Primordia is a very ancient world, and in distant or in epochs in the distant past, there, at least according to legend, there were things that people could do with magic that people can't do anymore. So part of the purpose of the guild is trying to learn more about magic, and not only rediscovering the miracles that were done in the past, but also discovering new things to do with magic that no one's ever done before. They also protect the cities. So they help the city guard or whatever other militaries are in place to protect the cities. The guild focuses more on protecting from magical threat and monsters and things like that than, invasions of armies and stuff like that. Although, they would help with that too. They foster cooperation among the races. So the guild is a truly multicultural organization. They have chapters in the different cities of Primordia, and they have members of all the races, or at least all the PC races, all the, quote, good races, have members in the guild. And although individual cities might be very insular or racist, the guild is not. And so, for instance, in my city of Alondria, there are half-orcs in the guild, and they might be the only half-orcs in the entire city, but they're welcome in the guild, even if they're not welcome other places. And also the guild fights monsters and other things that threaten or will threaten civilization. And a lot of this is things that come out of these interdimensional rifts. Demons coming from the abyss, devils coming from the nine hells, aberrations and whatnot coming from beyond the universe and all that stuff. They protect civilization from all those things. So you can see that the guild does a lot. There's a lot under their umbrella, and a lot of these things that they do are pretty broad, but they don't do everything. There are definitely things that are outside of their domain. And, one notable such thing is they're not politically active. They try to stay outside of political conflict. So for instance, Alondria, they will protect Alondria from an evil dragon that tries to attack, or an undead army or something like that. But if Alondria goes to war with another city-state, the guild is not going to get involved, because the guild probably has a chapter in that other city-state. They might, in such a situation, they might provide like humanitarian aid to both sides, healing and stuff like that. But they're not going to get involved in a conflict like that, and they're not going to take sides in a conflict like that, because the guild is trying to bring everybody together. They're trying to bring all the human city-states together, the elves, the dwarves, the halflings. They're trying to bring everybody together in common cause and common defense against all these invaders from the other planes and other worlds. So goals, I think we covered its goals, protect people, preserve knowledge, expand magical knowledge, things like that. Who founded it and why? I've actually given some thought to this. Let me see if I can find the founders. The idea is that the guild was founded by a group of powerful individuals. One of these was Selenia, the silver dragon, who is, I think, the only one that I've actually named and have like some character information for. There was a powerful elf queen, a human wizard king, a bronze dragon. There were angels and or avatars sent by the gods Ion, Tepestra, Inara, and Emora that were founders, as well as some Fey nobles. So there is this group of very powerful individuals who came together and created and founded the guild. And the idea, and I'm going to add more founders. For instance, I need a dwarf of some kind in here. The idea is that at least the most common races of the world were represented in the founders. It was this idea of everybody coming together and being like, hey, things are really screwed up right now. We should really work together. All right, so we've answered all those questions. I thought I had a motto, but I can't find it. I know I did. It was like preserve, protect, defend, something like that. But anyway, it's not important. The vision statement, that's what I was trying to remember before. That I have a vision statement. So the motto would just be a condensed version of that, right? That you could put on a coat of arms or something. I know one of it, I know it was preserve and protect. Because they preserve, I think it was preserve, protect, expand, I think is what it was. But anyway, a symbol or a coat of arms, I can't draw for crap, but I did draw a sketch of what I'm picturing for a coat of arms. So, it's a shield like a lot of coat of arms are. And then on the shield is an open book. Behind the open book is a sword. And behind the open book and the sword are the two suns, the blue and the red sun of Primordia. And so those are representing kind of knowledge and strength of arms and magic and all that good stuff. I'm probably going to expand the coat of arms because, again, I just mentioned among the founding members of the guild were angels and our avatars of Ion, Tepestra, Inara, and Amora. So I think within the coat of arms, I want symbols of each of those deities within that. So they're all represented. But I don't want it to get too busy. So that's what I've got right now. And then the last thing they say here is think of ways that the player characters might come in contact with the organization. And my intent, my plan is that all player characters will be members of the guild. In every D&D game, the player characters are these things called adventurers. And one thing I wanted to do in my world is make adventurers a literal thing in the world, a profession that people are, and people are known as adventurers. And there's a guild that represents that, just like there's a guild of blacksmiths and there's a guild of thieves and assassins and all that stuff. So there's a guild that represents adventurers, and that's what pretty much all the player characters are. Now, sometimes it might be fun to do an adventure campaign with characters that aren't members of the guild. But the idea is, unless they were like totally evil or whatever, that any adventurer would want to be a member of the guild. Unless you're doing something you shouldn't, there's really no reason that you wouldn't want to be part of the guild, because you'd have access to resources and things that you wouldn't normally have. And in that regard, I picture the guild as, well, it's a few things. It's kind of a combination of like Hogwarts from Harry Potter or the White Tower from Wheel of Time. It's an organization that brings everyone together and has resources that the player characters can draw on, whether that's money or magic items or hirelings, things like that. So it's partly that. And the other idea is it's kind of like the Witchers in the Witcher video games, where adventurers that are a member of the guild are immediately recognizable by anyone in the city or anyone in the world. You see an adventurer and you know right away that's an adventurer. And part of that is just like the Witchers. Adventurers are not normal people. They're touched by magic. They, even if you're playing a character that has no magical abilities whatsoever, you're still going to drink potions. You're still going to use magic items throughout your career. You're still going to visit places of power and encounter beings of power. So you are going to interact with and be touched by magic in a way that the average person isn't. And the idea is that in Primordia, magic is like radiation. It can mutate you. It changes you. And the belief, and it's a true belief, is that people that interact with magic are not completely normal and mundane anymore. They may not even be human anymore. And a lot of people believe that they're not human anymore. So there are people who are prejudiced against adventurers because of that, especially, people in remote villages that don't get out at all, and never encounter magic might be prejudiced against adventurers. And so I haven't come up with all the details of that. Part of it is what I'm right now calling the gifts of Primordia or the gifts of Tepestra. And it's the idea that as the player characters gain experience, they gain abilities above and beyond what they get from their class and their background and all that come from the magic of Primordia itself, and represent the fact that as they are exposed to magic more and more, it changes them, and they get abilities that they can pull on, and they'll be different for every character. And they're not always the same, but I'm still working on all of that. All right, so next we have a discussion of renown. Renown is an optional rule you can use to track an adventurer's standing within a particular faction or organization, and I highly recommend you use it. It's a great rule. Renown is a numerical value that starts at 0, then increases as a character earns favor and reputation within a particular organization. You can tie benefits to a character's renown, including ranks and titles within the organization and access to resources. A player tracks renown separately for each organization his or her character is a member of. For example, an adventurer might have 5 renown within one faction and 20 renown within another, based on the character's interaction with each organization over the course of the campaign. So pretty simple. You set up in your organization, you set up different ranks, and you decide how much renown a character needs to have to achieve each rank. And you can also come up with the title that character would have within the organization for each rank. So how do we gain renown? A character earns renown by completing missions or quests that serve an organization's interests or involve the organization directly. You award renown at your discretion as characters complete these missions or quests, typically at the same time you award experience points. Advancing an organization's interests increases a character's renown within that organization by 1. Completing a mission specifically assigned by that organization, or which directly benefits the organization, increases the character's renown by 2 instead. For example, characters with connection to the Noble Order of the Gauntlet complete a mission in which they free a town from the tyranny of a blue dragon. Because the Order likes to punish evildoers, you might increase each character's renown within the Order by 1. So it's something they did that is within the goals of the Order, but it's not something the Order explicitly asked them to do. So they get 1 renown for that. Conversely, if killing the dragon was a mission given to the adventurers by a senior member of the Order, completing the task might instead increase each character's renown by 2, showing the adventurers as effective allies. Meanwhile, the party's rogue might have looted a box of rare poisons from the dragon's hoard and sold it to a fence who is secretly a Zentarum agent. You might increase the rogue's renown within the Zentarum by 2, since this action directly increased that group's power and wealth, even though the task was not assigned by an agent of the Zentarum. So, you can kind of judge that as a DM, A given action might be worth 2 renown because it's something that was directly requested by the organization, or it might be worth 2 renown because it's something that especially advances that organization's cause or agenda. Benefits of renown. The benefits of increasing renown within an organization can include rank and authority, friendly attitudes for members of the organization, and other perks. Rank. Characters earn promotions as their renown increases. You can establish certain thresholds of renown that serve as prerequisites, though not necessarily the only prerequisites, for advancing in rank as shown in the examples of faction ranks table. For example, a character might join the Lord's Alliance after earning 1 renown within that organization, gaining the title of Cloak. As the character's renown within the organization increases, he or she might be eligible for further increases in rank. You can add rank prerequisites. For example, a character affiliated with the Lord's Alliance might have to be at least 5th level before becoming a Stingblade, at least 10th level to be a War Duke, and at least 15th level to be a Lion Crown. You can set these thresholds of renown to any numbers that work for your game, creating appropriate titles and ranks for the organizations in your campaign. So they give an example here of faction ranks. Actually, they give examples for all of the standard organizations they use, and they all use the same renown system. So you become a member with renown 1, you advance to the next rank with renown 3, renown 10 for the next rank, 25 for the next after that, and 50 for the highest rank. And then they give the different titles for those different ranks in the Harpers, Order of the Gauntlet, Emerald Enclave, Lord's Alliance, and Zentarum. So the easiest way you could do this if you want to create your own organization is use the same renown values that they use, come up with your own titles for those ranks, and decide what kind of benefits the characters would get for being that rank. If you want to go a little bit deeper than that and you want to change the values of renown, just think about how much do I want a player character to have to do to gain this next rank, and keep in mind that if they just do something that furthers the goals of the organization, they get 1 renown. If they do something that they were actually asked to do by the organization, or something that especially furthers their goals, they get 2 renown. So you can think, well, how many of these things do I want them to need to do to get a rank? And you can use that to decide how many renown they need for that rank. So here are some examples of some things that they could get with their ranks in the organization. Attitudes of organization members. As a character's renown within an organization grows, members of that organization are increasingly likely to have heard of the character. You can set thresholds at which the default attitude of an organization's members toward the character becomes indifferent or friendly. For example, members of the Emerald Enclave, a faction dedicated to preserving the natural order, might be less friendly toward characters who have not cultivated at least 3 renown within that organization, becoming friendly by default only when a character has gained 10 renown. These thresholds apply only to the default attitude of most members of an organization, and such attitudes aren't automatic. NPC faction members might dislike an adventurer despite that character's renown, or perhaps because of it. You could also have perks. Earning a rank within an organization comes with certain benefits as defined by you. A character of low rank might gain access to a reliable contact, an adventure leads, a safe house, or a trader willing to offer a discount on adventuring gear. A middle-ranked character might gain a follower, access to potions and scrolls, the ability to call in a favor, or backup on dangerous missions. A high-ranking character might be able to call on a small army, take custody of a rare magic item, gain access to a helpful spellcaster, or assign special missions to members of lower rank. And then finally, we have the suggestion of downtime activities. You might allow characters to spend downtime between adventures, building relationships and gaining renown within an organization. For more information, see Chapter 6, Between Adventures. So this is pretty cool, and depending on your organization, you might set this up different ways. And again, I'll remind you that you can, in addition to the number of renown they need to get to a certain rank, you can have other prerequisites as well. They suggest having a level prerequisite, but you could have other things. I mean, those prerequisites could be anything. Like to get this certain rank, you need to have land and a title could be a prerequisite, or you need to have so much money, or you need to have donated so much money to the organization, and anything you can come up with.
This is Matthew Colville, and you're listening to Game Master's Journey.
I want to take a minute to give a quick shout out to the patrons of Starwalker Studios. The support of the patrons makes this show possible. If you enjoy Game Master's Journey and you'd like to give a little back, becoming a patron is a great way to do so. It's because of the patrons that all the listeners of Game Master's Journey enjoy a bonus episode every month. I'd also like to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Tier 4 patron, Mr. Steve Strickland. Let's hear it for Steve.
Yeah. Yes.
You the man. Thank you so much, Steve, and thank you to all the patrons. You can find out more about becoming a patron by clicking on the Patreon button at the top of the show notes at starwalkerstudios.com. So I did this for the guild, the Adventurers Guild. So I have a few different ranks. I have the Initiate rank. Well, actually, I guess it's not technically a rank, but I start out with what I call hopefuls, which are people who are not in the guild, but they want to join the guild, and they're petitioning to join the guild. And you have to prove yourself to join the guild, at which point you become an Initiate. And then after that is Apprentice, and then Journeyman, and then Master, and then Grandmaster. And I think I have others in there. I've kind of fiddled around with different setups. And as far as some of the perks that you get from being in the Adventurers Guild, part of the shtick of the guild is they want you to find historical artifacts. So these can be coins. They can be art objects that you find, and even gems, depending what they are, they might have historical value. So one of the perks that you get is you get, how can I say? First of all, any monetary things, any things like gem, coins, whatever, even art objects, you get full value of that from the guild. So you can either set, like if it's a gem and you just want coins instead, you can just sell it to the guild and say, hey, I'm going to sell these turquoise to you and get their value in gold. And the guild gives you gold. There's no, they don't take anything off the top or anything like that. You get the full market value. With art objects, it might be something where it's a relic from a past civilization, and the guild actually wants that. They want to put it in a museum. But if that's the case, they're going to pay you the full value for that art object, just the same as if you sold it to a merchant or anyone else. Because the idea is that they want you to sell it to them. I originally considered having them actually give a premium, like give 10% more than the value. But I eventually decided not to do that, partly because I didn't want to add more math to the game, and partly because I didn't want to increase the rate of treasure gain, because player characters are already going to get a lot of benefits for being members in the guild. So I didn't think I need to amp up the money they're getting as well. So they just give them the market price. And I think just the fact that it's going to be easy, they can just go to the guild and sell everything, will ensure that player characters actually sell to the guild and don't sell somewhere else. They can also sell magic items to the guild for half the market price of that item. And market price is not to say that there's a market for magic items in Primordia. It's just a term, that the value of that item, whatever I as a dungeon master decide that is, or even more to the point, whatever the guild decides that is. So, Primordia, like most places in D&D, isn't a place where you can just sell magic items to anyone, but the guild will buy them as long as it's something they could potentially use, and they will pay you a fair price for them. Because again, the guild is made up of adventurers. So if you don't need that +1 sword that you found, some other adventurer in the guild will. So they can buy items from you and then turn around and sell them to other adventurers. So that's another perk that you get being a member in the guild, is you can buy magic items. And I actually go so far as to give my players a basically inventory of what the guild quartermaster has. And it can change week to week. But I'll list out, these are the things that you can buy. And things that are almost always on that list, if not always, are potions of healing, potions of greater healing, potions of superior healing, Kyotam's ointment, spell scrolls for common low-level spells like detect magic, detect traps, cure wounds, stuff like that. Other common items that you can buy from the guild are the glasses that give you dark vision. I forget what they're called. Bags of holding, stuff like that. And then sometimes I'll just put something random or something that I think is cool on there that is there for a limited time only kind of thing. Now, I do price magic items really high. So, it's not something where player characters can just buy magic items willy-nilly, but if there's something they really want and they're willing to shell out a lot of gold for it, they can get it. Once a PC becomes an initiate, once they pass their test and they're actually brought into the guild, they get a guild cloak, which is a fairly powerful, rare magic item. It's kind of an amped up cloak of protection with some other properties. And at higher ranks, they eventually will get a guild weapon, which is a magical weapon that the guild grants to them. If it's a character that's not so much a user of weapons, they did get something comparable. So a wizard might get a wand. A warlock might get a Rod of the Pact Keeper, that kind of thing. And then at a certain rank, they get magical armor from the guild. So again, if the character doesn't wear armor, they might get something equivalent like bracers of defense or ring of protection or something like that. Some kind of defensive item. And then when they become a grandmaster, they will get some kind of legendary item from the guild. And all of these I have level requirements. So for instance, to be an apprentice of the guild or initiate, I kind of go back and forth if I want to call it initiate or apprentice. But to be an initiate, you have to be second level, which, you're going to be once you pass the guild test. To be a journeyman of the guild, you have to be 5th level. So not only do you have to gain the renown that you need, but you also have to be 5th level before you can become a journeyman. To be a master, you have to be 11th level. And to be a grandmaster, you have to be 17th level. So all those ranks have a renown requirement and a level requirement. And my reasoning behind having the guild give player characters magic items, because you might be like, whoa, Lex, at 17th level, you're just going to give them a legendary item. Well, if you think about it as dungeon masters, we just give player characters magic items all the time, right? Whether they find it in a dragon horde, they take it from the cold dead hands of a hobgoblin, or the guild gives it to them, the DM is giving them a magic item, right? And the reason I like doing it this way is it allows me to give a character an item that is the perfect item for that character and not worry about how I'm going to make that make sense in the story. Right? If I have a dwarf player character and they kill a dragon and he just happens to find this suit of dwarven armor that has like the perfect abilities for his character and just really fits his character perfectly, it's kind of stretching belief to think that he would just find that randomly in a dungeon, right? Or in a dragon's horde or whatever. But if that's a gift from an organization, from a guild, who, has adventurers all over the world selling magic items to them, then it makes sense that they, had this item in their inventory somewhere in some city that they're like, hey, this totally fits Keldor the dwarf. So we're going to, bring it from the city of Null to the city of Elandria, and we're going to give it to Keldor because he's a grandmaster now. So he gets his magic armor kind of thing. Right. So to me, from a story perspective, it makes more sense for the guild to give them an item that fits the character more than them just randomly finding it. And this kind of thing, I always think of from the Lord of the Rings when the characters get their magic items from the elves, I think it's the Wood Elves, right? I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings guru, but Frodo got like the mithril shirt, and I don't remember what they all got, but they all got some kind of magic item from the elves, and they all became useful to them at some point. Like it was an item that character would need. Another example is from the Chronicles of Narnia. The kings and queens of Narnia each got, some kind of magic item. Like I think Susan got a magic bow and Lucy got a potion that could heal anything. And again, those were items that later on in the story, the character needed that specific item. And so I dig that. It's a fantasy trope. So I want to be able to do that in my games, but I want to be able to do it without it seeming super contrived. So having the guild reward those things, having you earn them by earning rank in the guild makes sense to me. And I think is an elegant solution to that. And then finally, we have the possibility that you could lose renown from an organization. Disagreements with members of an organization aren't enough to cause a loss of renown within that organization. However, serious offenses committed against the organization or its members can result in a loss of renown and rank within the organization. The extent of the loss depends on the infraction and is left to your discretion. A character's renown within an organization can never drop below 0. But again, at 0, you're no longer a member of the organization, right? Because the first rank is at 1 renown. So in the Guild of Adventurers, this can happen. You screw up, you could lose rank, or you could get kicked out entirely. And one of the main ways you could, quote, screw up is by doing evil deeds. Because at the end of the day, the Guild is a good organization and it's a lawful organization. Now, they're probably much more concerned about the good side of that than the lawful side. The lawful side is more just to keep them out of trouble with the lords of the land and whatnot. They're more concerned with the cause of good. So if your character demonstrates himself to be evil over and over and over again, he's not going to be a member of the guild anymore. It doesn't matter if he's a Grand Master. It doesn't matter what he's done for the guild. If he is not guild material, he's out. Or if it's maybe not that bad, but they want to give him a slap on the wrist, they might demote him, right? So that can totally happen. And again, the system of renown and having a renown score is a way that you can keep track of this mechanically as a DM. And it's a shorthand, right? Because you can have your player characters listed out. You can have each organization. You could have it in a chart, right? Each player character on down the y-axis. And then on the x-axis, you have all the different organizations they're members of, and then you have their score, their renown in each organization. And right there in a chart, you've got all the characters, all the organizations, and where they all fit and where they all stand within all those different organizations. So now finally, we're going to talk about piety. With a few alterations, the renown system can also serve as a measure of a character's link to the gods. It's a great option for campaigns where the gods take active roles in the world. Using this approach, you track renown based on specific divine figures in your campaign. Each character has the option to select a patron deity or pantheon with goals, doctrine, and taboos that you have created. Any renown he or she earns is called piety. A character gains piety for honoring his or her gods, fulfilling their commands, and respecting their taboos. A character loses piety for working against the gods, dishonoring them, defiling their temples, and foiling their aims. The gods bestow favors on those who prove their devotion. With each rank of piety gained, a character can pray for divine favor once per day. This favor usually comes in the form of a cleric spell like Bless. The favor often comes with a sign of the divine benefactor. For example, a character dedicated to Thor might receive a spell accompanied by the boom of thunder. A high level of piety can also lead to a character gaining a more persistent benefit in the form of a blessing or charm. See Chapter 7, Treasure, for more supernatural gifts. So this is also something I'm doing in Primordia. And the way I'm doing this is I'm having mystery cults for my gods. And mystery cults, we discussed a little bit in an earlier episode when we were discussing religion in your world. And my world of Primordia has a very kind of secular church called the Church of the Nine that represents all 9 gods of Primordia. And most people, if not everyone, at least pays lip service to the 9 gods through the Church of the Nine. But it's a very hands-off kind of thing. You give your donations to the Church of the Nine and you're done. And they supposedly intercede on your behalf to the 9 gods. However, a character, whether a non-player character or a player character, who wants to be more devout to that, who actually believes in the gods or really wants to honor the gods, and it's an important part of who they are, might be a member of the Church of the Nine as well, but they're going to be better served by a mystery cult. And there are mystery cults, probably multiple mystery cults, to each of the 9 gods of the world of Primordia. And each of these mystery cults are an organization that a character can be a member of, and gain renown, or we'll call it piety, in, just like we were discussing with different ranks. And like they said, whatever rank you are, that number of times per day, you can pray for divine help. And that might take the form of a spell like Bless or something like that happens to you. Or if you're higher rank, you might get a more permanent magical effect like a blessing or a charm, which again are later in the DMG. So a blessing typically has the properties of a wondrous item, but it is just a magical effect that is upon you. So it's basically like you have a wondrous item, but you don't have to actually carry around an object. And they are especially cool because they function normally in anti-magic fields, areas of wild or dead magic, etc. So they're so powerful that even if you're in a dead magic zone, they still work. A charm, on the other hand, often mimics the effects of a spell or a potion, and usually can only be used once or a set number of times, basically has charges. And charms do not work in dead magic zones or anti-magic fields and are susceptible to wild magic. So in Primordia, my mystery cults for the gods are actual organizations that the player characters can join, and they can earn renown in the normal ways by performing deeds and quests and whatnot for the mystery cult, and also by making offerings to the particular deity, and as they said, observing the taboos and things like that. So the thing I do differently about the piety with the mystery cults is, unlike the renown in say the guild, where that is a number that the player knows. They know what their character's renown in the guild is. A player character's piety or their renown with a given deity is a number that I have that I keep to myself. Now, the mystery cult has ranks, so they know what rank they are in the cult. But as far as what their piety is, what that number is, they don't know. I don't share that with them, because how would they know, right? And the piety, it's kind of a two-sided coin. On the one hand, it represents their reputation with that particular mystery cult. But on the other hand, it also represents their reputation with this specific deity. So they tend to go hand in hand, because if you're in the favor of a deity, it will make that obvious to the followers of the mystery cult. So you won't have a case where, the deity considers you high renown or high piety, but the mystery cult considers you low renown or low piety. Like, that won't happen, because these are true believers. So if you're favored by that deity, they know it. They can tell. So the interesting thing here is, not only can the player characters be a member of the guild in other organizations, like a thieves guild or an assassin's guild or other organizations that might exist in the world, not only can they be members of those organizations and members of a mystery cult, they can also, if they choose, be members of more than one mystery cult dedicated to more than one god. Or I suppose they could be members of more than one mystery cult dedicated to different aspects of the same god. Either or both is possible. The main limiting factor there is not any rule or mechanical thing that says you can only be a member of this many mystery cults. It's not even the god saying you can't be a member of another god's cult. It's just how much time does the character have to devote to the cults, because, to advance in rank, you're going to have to do X amount, and to maintain your rank, you're going to have to do X amount. So there is a limit to what you could do. At some point, you're going to stretch yourself too thin if you're a member of too many cults, and you're not going to be able to keep your standing in all of them, just because they're all going to want you to go on a quest, and you can't do all the quests, so you're going to have to pick and choose. But I think a player character could be a member of two cults, and I think that'd be doable. Three'd probably be pushing it. And unless the three gods they chose were well aligned together and complementary, I would probably, if they're trying to do three, I'd probably have there be conflicts between what the different mystery cults wanted them to do. So they'd have to choose. You can't have everything. You can't have your cake and eat it too. But just as with the guild ranks, you get perks with that. with the mystery cults, you will get perks as well. And those perks will be twofold. On the one hand, you're going to get kind of the regular organizational stuff. Like you get standing within that cult. You can call on favors from members. You maybe get some lackeys or whatever. You know, they have better social attitudes towards you and all that stuff. You maybe can access resources that they have at their disposal, things like that. But on the other hand, there also will be a divine side to it where you will get actual magical, like spell-like abilities. Like maybe you can cast Bless once per day, or cast Cure Wounds once per day, or cast Raise Dead once per year at a high rank or whatever. And they'll be very limited. Like you'll have the ability to perform some kind of miracle, but you'll be limited in how often you can do that. And the idea behind this is to open up the ability to have people who can do healing in the party, especially, I've talked about this before, especially greater and lesser restoration, which can be very needed. Our discussion, when I was talking about the Hidden Shrine, I talked about, you need lesser restoration to get rid of this disease. So maybe you don't have a cleric or a bard that has lesser restoration, but you have a character that's high enough rank in one of these mystery cults that they can cast lesser restoration like once a week or once a month. Again, they're not going to be able to take the place of a full cleric or a healing focused bard, but in a tight spot, they could have what the party needs as long as they don't need it too often. So part of what I want to do here is I want to have more to character advancement than just your level in your class, right? So you can get perks from the guild in the form of mainly magical items and like social and kind of in-world influence and stuff like that, and money. You can get perks from the goddess of magic Tepestra and from the magical field and radiation of the world of Primordia itself in the form of magical abilities as you advance in level and you use magic more. And you can get magical abilities from any mystery cults that you practice in the form of divine powers like healing and things like that. Or Bless is a perfect one, or Divine Favor, where your weapons do some extra radiant damage, or Shield of Faith would be another great one. So, for instance, if you're in the War God, Kaelus's mystery cult, like Shield of Faith would be an obvious choice, or Divine Favor, maybe more so. Well, Bless too, but probably more so than Cure Wounds, right? So he's not so much going to give you healing powers, as he's going to give you powers to smite your foes and whatnot. So in that way, as you play a character in Primordia, not only are you leveling up and gaining abilities that way, but you can also gain abilities and magic items and resources all through role playing and which quests and which things you decide to do and which organizations you work towards. So a character that's really all about a particular mystery cult might end up with some fairly powerful things that they can do. Now, again, with the mystery cults, just like with the guild, I'm going to have level prerequisites for certain things. So, and I'm going to base that on like what a cleric would get. So for instance, Raise Dead is a 5th level spell, and a cleric gets 5th level spells at 9th level. So I might say, whatever rank of the mystery cult gives you access to Raise Dead. And again, you'd only be able to do that maybe once a month, or maybe once a year, or maybe just once ever. I would really limit it as far as how often you could do it or how many times you could do it, especially Raise Dead. That's a really powerful effect. That might be something you can only use once, period. But that rank in the mystery cult that gave you access to Raise Dead, if that was a reward I would do, I might say you have to be 10th level or 11th level or even higher to be able to gain that rank, because I don't want a character who's not a cleric to get access to Raise Dead before the cleric would. So a cleric doesn't get it till 9th level. So you're going to have to be at least 10th or 11th or even higher before you would get that as a reward from a mystery cult. Unless you were a cleric. Because what I might do is with the clerics, I might actually have a separate scheme for clerics and paladins because they're a little more dedicated even yet than the average member of the mystery cult. So they might actually get some of the special abilities earlier than someone else would because they're a cleric and a paladin. And that might be a cool way. As, say, a cleric, you might actually be able to get access to Raise Dead sooner than you normally would because, well, you don't get the 5th level spells until 9th level, but as a mystery cult, you could get that rank at, say, 7th level or 8th level. Now, you can only cast it once. You don't get the spell slots or whatever. You know, you just get it as an ability you can use once, but you have it a little sooner because not only are you a cleric, but you're also a member of that mystery cult and you've done the groundwork to get to that high rank. So there you go. There's factions and organizations, and I use my guild and my mystery cult as kind of an example of how I'm approaching this in your game. And you know, you can come up with all kinds of factions and organizations. So as far as the guild, I kept it pretty simple. I have one organization that all the player characters can be members of, but I could, or you could, come up with an organization for wizards and a different one for warlocks and a different one for clerics and a different one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like cleric could be the temple of their god or whatever, right? Or the church of their god. Like you could come up with organizations for every single player character class, and every player character is a member of a different organization. Really, the sky's the limit to how many organizations you can come up with. And I think also my example showed how you can have different types of perks that you get for different organizations. So the guild, you get social standing, you get fame, and also infamy to some of the people who are prejudiced against adventurers. You get money, you get, you know, I didn't really talk about this, but they can teleport you places. They can do divination for you. You get all kinds of magic stuff. You get magic items at certain points, you know, where the mystery cults, you don't so much get money. You don't so much get magic items, although you might get a relic, which is a whole nother topic, but those are holy magic items that I have in Primordia. You might get one of those at really high rank of a mystery cult. Probably that would be like a quest to get one of those. You wouldn't just get it. But what you do get from a mystery cult is you can perform some miracles, basically divine or cleric spells that you can use in a very limited capacity, but are, especially if you're not a cleric or a paladin or some other spellcaster, are abilities that you would never have otherwise unless you had a magic item. And again, you can get the charms and the blessings, which are pretty cool, especially the blessings because they work in dead magic zones, which do exist in Primordia. In fact, I have a city, one of the cities Landria trades with, Null, is a city that's in a dead magic area, and the whole city is. So, you know, a blessing would be really powerful there because it would still work when most other supernatural things don't. So yeah, really the sky's the limit with organizations, and I really encourage you to use them and to think about developing some for your setting if you haven't already, or maybe you have, but you haven't really drilled down to what are the ranks, what renown, you know, how would it work if the player characters were a member of this organization. So I really encourage you to do that. And, you know, for my final thought here today, I'm going to return to kind of our mantra as world builders and as game masters is focus on what you need right now, right? So, you know, you don't want to necessarily sit down and start creating every organization that could or would exist in your world. You want to focus on the ones that are going to be most useful to you right now. So like this in the DMG, think about what are organizations that are going to be relevant in the story I want to tell, in this campaign, in this adventure. And also, what are organizations that are going to be relevant to my players and to their characters? What are organizations that these player characters that I have in my group right now are going to want to be a part of, are going to want to work for? Because if none of the player characters want to join the organization, all that time you spend on it is kind of a waste. And let's use it for NPCs, because who cares if they don't want to be part of it? You much rather spend that time in an organization where they're going to want to join it. They're going to want to gain renown. They're going to want to get those perks, and they're going to want to further that organization's goals. And then that can be kind of the backbone that you can build a whole campaign on, and a way to keep everybody moving in the same direction. Or You can have people moving in different directions if they're members of different organizations, and even in conflicting directions if you're into that. So there's a lot you can do with it, and I really encourage you to give it a shot. And finally, if you are using organizations in this way in your game, I would love to hear from you what organizations you have, how you use them, maybe what some of your ranks and what the perks player characters get. You can email that to me at gamemastersjourney@gmail.com. But even better, I think, would be to share it in our Google community so everybody can see, and we can all share ideas of different organizations we have, different perks that we give in those organizations, what ranks we have, how much renown you need for those ranks. And it can help inspire all of us coming up with our organizations. Because I imagine no matter how many organizations you've fleshed out for your world, you can always add more, right? I mean, there's always room for more. So I think that would be very beneficial to all of us. All right, well, that is going to wrap up episode 161 of Game Master's Journey. If you would like to get a hold of me, please visit the website, starwalkerstudios.com. You can find everything you need there. You can find my email address, Twitter, Google+, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube channel. You can find the Game Master's Journey voicemail number where you can call and leave me a message. If your question or feedback is entertaining or enlightening or both, you may even hear your message on the show, or you may hear me discuss whatever you mentioned on the show. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for future topics, I would love to hear from you. You can also find a link to the Game Master's Journey community where you can share ideas with other listener GMs. So if you'd like to write in and tell us all about the organizations in your world and your ranks and your levels of renown and the perks the player characters get, I'd love to hear it. I think we'd all love to hear it. And let's get as big a pool of ideas as we can. And finally, you can learn how you can support the show by becoming a patron, by making a one-time donation, by using my Amazon referral link when you shop on Amazon, or by purchasing my D&D adventure, The Trickster's Labyrinth. You can find all this and more at starwalkerstudios.com. I hope that you have a chance to play your favorite RPG this week. I hope you have a chance to run your favorite RPG. I hope you come up with some cool organizations, and I hope you share them with us on the Game Master's Journey community. I'll be back soon with another episode of Game Master's Journey. Until then, game on. Peace. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Matt Colville says it. See ya. Game on. I don't know what I'm doing. See you guys.
This has been a Starwalker Studios production, your source for quality gaming and hobby podcasts.
This episode's music courtesy of Cloudwalker, Transboy, Renfield, Stanko, and Ish. See the show notes for more details at starwalkerstudios.com/Game Master's Journey.